All right, and we are back here on the GSMC football podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we're going to now get into talking about another disappointing team, and that is the Cincinnati Bengals. And we're going to talk about some comments made by Zach Taylor on Jamar Chase and what Jamar Chase said after the game against the Chargers. And this is another team, like I said, that has been a disappointment. This was a team that I had making the playoffs, had them competing with the Ravens for the top spot in the division, and it just hasn't gone that way. Now, the defense for the Bengals, I think, is, the main culprit. I think if the Bengals had a average defense, their record would be a lot better. But because the defense has been one of the worst in the league, that's kind of where they're at. Joe Burrow's playing at a high level, and they mounted a comeback against the Chargers. They had an opportunity to win that game, but they fell short. But the two missed field goals wasn't on the defense, but still, the defense has not been good. Against the Ravens was not good. Against the Commanders early on in the season, it was not good either. It's been a rough season for them. I'm having problems loading up some of my notes here. But anyways, so Jamar Chase at the end of the Chargers game, the media reporters were asking him about the Bengals' inability to finish games. And Jamar Chase said, "Ask Zach. Ask the coaches. That's not my job. I play football on the field. I don't call plays for us." Now, Zach Taylor responded to that, and he defended Jamar Chase's comments and said that Jamar Chase is one of the most genuine players, and he said that he had no problem with Chase speaking passionately after a game. But it's been a trying season for them. He also talked about how there's been disagreements and passionate comments from players in the past. He talked about Tyler Boyd. There was an incident with him. He said Zach Taylor basically said that he views these moments as healthy and indicative of a desire to win. So, didn't really take any issue with what Chase had to say, but you do kind of worry about Zach Taylor and his job security if the Bengals do end up missing out on the playoffs and they're not able to turn it around. Because they still can, but they definitely are running out of time. They are running on thin ice right now. And, you go back and you look at some of these games, and Joe Burrow has played great. But you look at the Chiefs game that they lost, Joe Burrow ended up fumbling the ball in that game, and that led to a scoop and score. And then you did have the flag at the end of the game, the pass interference call that set up the game-winning field goal. Again, don't want to put the full blame on Burrow, but that happened. Then you go back to the Ravens game, the first one, and Burrow threw a pick in that game that led to points by the Ravens. I think that's what they ended up tying the game off of that. And it went to overtime, and the Ravens ended up winning in overtime. The Bengals also had a 10-point lead in that game. And then the Ravens game the second time around, you had a 14-point lead, and they ended up blowing that. And then here, against the Chargers, it was a tale of two halves. The first half, Bengals could not get anything going. But then the second half, they really took off. And they had an opportunity to take the lead. McPherson misses those two field goals. And there was a play where Burrow missed Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase broke free. He was wide open. He could have hit him for a touchdown. Missed him there. It's just, it's been a combination of many things. But it's just, that's what some people will point to when it comes to Joe Burrow and say he's got to play better, even though he's played great. He's an MVP candidate. if, the Bengals have a better record. He's been very good. But had some of these plays and these turnovers not have happened, if these certain plays have gone their way, they would have a better record. But I think the biggest problem with them is it's the defense. It kind of reminds me, although this offense that I'm about to bring up was not nearly as good as the Bengals offense this year, and that's the 2015 Giants. How many games did the Giants end up losing because their defense just could not get a stop? Their offense was good in 2015. Eli Manning had his best statistical season. I think he had 35 touchdowns that season, and you're probably saying, "Wow, that was his career best, his season best." 35 touchdowns in a season. Yeah, it was. But guess what? He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame with 2 Super Bowls. So let's not forget that. But their defense could not get a stop for the life of them. They lost to the Cowboys the first week. There was another game they blew against the Falcons. The Jets, that game they ended up losing. The Panthers, with Cam Newton and his MVP season, they ended up coming back against them. They were down big, but they ended up coming back, but they still ended up losing that game. How about that Saints game against Drew Brees? Eli threw, 6 touchdowns in that game? And Brees threw 7. The final score was like 52-49. I've seen it as a Giant fan. And the Bengals are kind of going through something similar, where, they've had leads and they end up losing them. They take their foot off the gas pedal for a second, and then all of a sudden, the team they're going against is right back in the game. And it happened both times against the Ravens. And the Chargers on Sunday, they gave them every opportunity to win that game. Because then the Chargers offense disappeared. Herbert was missing guys, and, the Bengals got the ball back, and they, drove down the field, got into field goal range, but McPherson missed those 2 kicks, and he's been a very good kicker over the course of his young career, but not this year, and not in that game. And this team is deflated. And Zach Taylor doesn't have the answers either. He doesn't know what to make of it, because it just keeps happening every week. I mean, what do you say? What more can this offense do? It's just they have to be perfect. That's really what it is. You have to be perfect. They have to basically score on every drive. But that's not going to happen. Jamar Chase is having a career year. Might win the Triple Crown when it comes to receivers. T. Higgins, the reports are out there. He's probably not coming back next year. I kept saying this is like the last run you're going to have with, these 3 together. And T. Higgins might be gone, and that's a big loss if you end up losing T. Higgins. But they want to pay Jamar Chase. And, if it comes down to either T. Higgins or Jamar Chase, they're going to pay Jamar Chase. T. Higgins is a very good receiver. But Jamar Chase is, he's a top 5, top 3 receiver in the NFL right now. So you're going to pay him. And as a Giant fan, maybe the Giants get T. Higgins. You pair him with Malik Neighbors, and then they draft a quarterback. I know one of my friends has been saying that the last couple of days. I would love that. That would be great. But we'll see if that even happens. So, yeah, it's just, it's tough. It's tough. Because, Burrow, I know he's still trying to, I wouldn't say he's still 100%. Still trying to, work his way back from the wrist injury. Because, you still see him, flexing his hand. But, look, it hasn't impacted his play on the field because, I mean, he's been chucking the ball down the field to Chase. He's had a very good year. It's just the results are not there. They're 4-7, and it's going to be an uphill battle for them to try to get back into this thing. Because again, they're typically a team that starts off slow, but they just have not. They haven't recovered. They have not recovered. And you got the Steelers twice on the schedule. They do have the Browns again, I believe. Who else do they have? They have the Titans on the schedule. They got the Broncos on the schedule. They got the Cowboys. I mean, there are definitely winnable games on the schedule here. They got the Broncos at home at least, so that's good. I mean, it's not like they don't have a chance to beat the Steelers. They definitely do, but their defense is a problem. So we'll see what happens. But, yeah, it's just been a very disappointing season. Right now, looking at the wild card, they're 3 games out. Now, they do play the Broncos. If they could somehow get their way back to 500 and you find yourself a game behind the Broncos and you could find a way to beat them, maybe. But they'd have to sweep the Steelers. The Cowboys, I think they should beat with Cooper Rush at quarterback, but who knows. At the Titans, I think they should win that. Browns at home, I think they should win that. The Broncos game, in my opinion, is Broncos game and the Steelers. Those are the toughest games left on the schedule. But it's a divisional game, so the Steelers could win that. I mean, the Bengals could win those. Burrow's usually done well against the Steelers. But again, the defense is going to have to step up. And the defense did step up in the second half. They shut down the Chargers offense. The Chargers offense really did nothing in the second half until that last drive of the game. So, I don't know. It's going to be tough. So we'll see if they can find their way back into this thing. But I'm curious to see what happens, because if this team ends up, finishing with like 7 or 8 wins, is Zach Taylor gone? That's a job that would be very intriguing to somebody if Zach Taylor ends up getting let go. Definitely be people lining up to coach the Bengals with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase on the team, and then hoping to rebuild that defense. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think, though, about the Bengals. You think they still have a chance at the playoffs? Let me know in the comments. So when we come back from our final break, we'll talk more about the Giants benching Daniel Jones and just what some of the players had to say, what Dexter Lawrence had to say about it. We'll get into all that when we come back from our final break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.